May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be aligned with your love, O God, our strength, our courage, and our freedom. Amen. Okay, my friends, I'm going to give you some of the best good news I possibly can share with anyone. And that good news is that your body, mind, soul, spirit, and relationships, your very life can be the venue for glory attacks. Now, I think you intuitively know what I mean by glory attacks. But the formal religious definition can be found in scriptures where the word doxa, D-O-X-A, from which we get doxology, usually expresses the radiance and splendor associated with the presence of God. The glory of God shone round the shepherds, and they were sore afraid, which means they were having glory attacks. In this morning's first lesson, and in the gospel lesson appointed for this last Sunday of the Epiphany, yes, just before Lent, which begins this coming Wednesday, we see one of the effects of God's glory on the face of Moses and on the person of Jesus. According to both stories, the story of Moses and the story of Jesus' transfiguration in the gospel today, both of these men radiate in dazzling ways because they have spoken to God face to face. God's glory or radiance is reflected in their own radiance. There is a transmission of God's radiance onto them, and it is always replenished by more and more exposure to God's radiance or glory. It's the only place in the Bible where there are beauty secrets for your skin. But don't stop using your anti-aging cream. So by glory attacks, I mean exposure to the divine. Remember the timeless truth of St. Irenaeus in the 2nd century. The glory of God is the human being fully alive. So my very, very, very good news to you this morning is that you too can have these glory attacks. They are not saved for just a few, as some individualistic distortions of religion would have it, that there are just special people who have these experiences with God. No. They are available for everyone. And in these last few moments before I retire, I am clocking in an average of 4 or 5 glory attacks every day. As my brother Donald Trump says, it's huge! Huge! So I want to share one of the glory attacks that I had this past week. So I had an appointment with one of our members who was telling me about his own nonstop glory attack transformational journey here at All Saints during the past year. Now, this is a man who grew up with absolutely no religious formation, so he genuinely is a religiously clean slate. You only find these kinds of people in California. This guy's tabula is so rasa that he was an adult the first time he ever heard the word resurrection. And he had to ask his husband what resurrection meant. So in telling me this narrative, there was a transformational turning point, and it happened at his attendance at last year's retreat with my friend, neuroscientist, and psychiatrist, Dr. Dan Siegel. This All Saints member happens to love the intersection of science and faith, and so Dr. Siegel's thinking is tailor-made for him. By the way, Dr. Siegel will return to All Saints next month to offer a repeat of his Soul and Synapse retreat, which was a moment of epiphany for this friend I was talking with. He'll be doing this next month, and you can sign up for it either today at the sign-up center or online anytime. Now, back to this Glory Attack conversation. During last year's retreat, Dr. Siegel led us in 3 mindfulness meditations, culminating in a mindfulness meditation, which is his signature meditation, the Wheel of Awareness meditation. And this All Saints member said that it was an amazing experience, which signaled that he was now touching the point in his soul where everything that is integrated. God, our true self, the genuine within us, and the entire creation. It's what I know to be both a cosmic click and a moment of deep grace and glory. This parishioner knew on the spot in the retreat that he wanted to commit to this meditation practice daily, which he then began a year ago. And then the next development in his narrative was that he knew he wanted to sustain the experience he was feeling in these meditation periods into longer stretches during the day. So he began developing a practice of pausing throughout the day for a mindfulness moment of the integration of all that is. God as you understand God, your true self, your family members, other members of the human family, your business life, and all of creation. Then he began with commitment and renewed attention to attend our educational offerings, learning about Thomas Merton and Richard Rohr, and particularly enjoying Ilia Delio's work, where she's developing a theology that is aligned with learnings from evolutionary science, as well as astrophysics, as well as quantum physics. And this parishioner began reading those books of these thinkers, and then 2 weeks ago, he and his husband attended the big evening celebration at Caltech, which was holding up the life of Richard Feynman, the great quantum physicist. The evening was called Some Entangled Evening. From the physics discovery that everything is entangled physically, including subatomic particles. And the All Saints member who was sitting in front of me had had a cosmic click connecting Richard Feynman's work to the part of Professor Ilia Delio's theology on quantum entanglements, and then he knew he wanted to come and tell me about it all. And he noted that every part of his life has been transfigured, has changed, from the way he shows up in his family, to the way he conducts his professional business, to the way he fathers their children. This man is radiant when he speaks of his recent journey. Just remember now that in both the story of Moses and the first reading of the story of Jesus' transfiguration and the gospel appointed for today, that both these persons radiate in dazzling ways because they've spoken to God face to face. They've had a glory experience. God's radiance is reflected in their own radiance. Now, another way to think about this, my argument is that this is not just for the Moseses and the Jesuses of the human race. This is for every one of us. Another way to think about this is through the lesson that I added to our liturgies for this morning. Because I recently learned of this very important speech by Dr. Howard Thurman, who, in addition to being the chaplain at some of our great universities in America, Morehouse in Atlanta, Howard in Washington, D.C., Boston University, and also being the founder of the first large interracial church in San Francisco, Dr. Thurman was the trusted spiritual advisor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And when the going got tough for Dr. King often sought out the pastoral care and spiritual guidance of Dr. Thurman, and not long before Dr. Thurman died in 1981, he delivered this famous speech, which excerpts were read just earlier, beautifully, the gist of which was that all of us must learn to listen for the sound of the genuine within us. Now, related to Dr. Thurman's concept of the genuine is the concept of the true self of Thomas Merton. It's all interconnected. Dr. Thurman said, there is in you something that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. Nobody like you has ever been born, and no one like you will ever be born again. You are the only one. And if you miss the sound of the genuine in you, you will be either spiritually or emotionally crippled, or both, all the rest of your life, because you will never be able to get a scent on who you are, S-C-E-N-T. So the burden on you is to figure out who you are and what is the genuine voice in you in the midst of all the competing and conflicting noises of all sorts inside of you. Then he ends that paragraph by saying to those graduates, you can only do this if you get still enough. And that's different from being quiet, getting still enough to listen to the sound of the genuine in you. I don't know if you can do this, but this is your assignment. It's almost as if he's saying to you and me on the cusp of Lent, this is your Lenten assignment. When you and I spend time coming to stillness, which takes longer than simply being quiet, genuine stillness being beneath being quiet, that stillness will invariably take you and me to the glory of God within us, the sound of the genuine within us, our true self within us, the house of love, the kingdom of God within, this little light of mine within. And that journey fills us with radiance, with energy, and with direction for our lives. That is how we, like Moses and Jesus, become transfigured or transformed. It is how we epiph. Now, finally, it's essential to understand something about God and about life with God. As soon as Moses had had his first encounter with God at the burning bush, God sent Moses to be an instrument of the liberation of Moses' people from Pharaoh in Egypt in the Exodus process. Similarly, with Jesus, as soon as he had had the transfiguration encounter with God on the mountaintop, against the cautions of Peter, who wanted to enshrine the moment. Ooh, we've just had a mountaintop experience. Let's preserve this forever. Jesus said, come off it, Peter. The purpose of mountaintop experiences with God is to go down from the mountain and into the valley where human pain and suffering and captivity are. So please, friends, understand. The way the glory of God works is to connect you and me with every other person and part of the creation, particularly those we see as different from us or repugnant to us, with those who are in pain, those who are in captivity of any sort, because the genuine resides in us all, and to connect with the genuine or connect with the glory of God deep within us will always connect us with everyone else and awaken in our hearts a call to do what we can to heal and to liberate those whose lives are in the valley right now. Last Thursday, President Obama addressed the National Prayer Breakfast. He told this story about some American soldiers who saved Jews during the Holocaust. It went like this. There was one American soldier who had been captured by the Nazis along with a group of American soldiers. Also, they were in captivity, and the Nazi captors ordered just the Jewish American prisoners of war to step forward and identify themselves. This one sergeant, a Christian named Roddy Edmonds from Tennessee, ordered all the American troops to report and step up front together. They lined up in formation. Approximately 200 American soldiers, prisoners of war. And the Nazi colonel barked, "I only ask for the Jewish POWs. These can't all be Jewish." And Master Sergeant Edmonds stood there and said, "We are all Jews." And the colonel took out his pistol and held it to the master sergeant's head and said, "Tell me who the Jews are." And this Tennessee soldier POW repeated, "We are all Jews." And faced with the choice of shooting all those soldiers, the Nazis relented. And so through this one soldier's moral clarity given to him by knowing that we are all one, Sergeant Edmonds saved the lives of his Jewish brothers in arms. When you and I find ways to unite with the glory of God inside us, we are able courageously to see the glory of God in all others. My North Star, Thomas Merton, had a now famous glory attack at the corner of 4th and Walnut in Louisville, Kentucky one day when he was going to see the doctor. He watched all the people on the sidewalk with him. There's now a plaque in that same place entitled "A Revelation." It is sometimes referred to as Thomas Merton's Epiphany, and the plaque reads, "Merton had a sudden insight on this corner on March 18, 1958, that led him to redefine his monastic identity with greater involvement in social justice issues. He was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people," to quote him. He found them walking around, shining like the sun. He wrote in his journal when he got back to the monastery that the pure glory of God is inside of us. Every human being has it. It's God's name written in us. And if we seek to see this in one another, there will be billions of points of light shining so brilliantly that all the darkness and the cruelty of life will completely disappear. We won't have time to have any more wars or bigotry because we will all be bowing before one another. When you and I speak with God face to face like Moses and like Jesus, we too will be transfigured to reflect the radiance and the energy, the genuine that is God. And that will never be the end of it. That in itself is not even worthy to enshrine in some mountaintop. That's a visceral experience. We are also called to empathize with, be in solidarity with, and to identify with everyone who is vulnerable and held captive by the bigotries and violence of our time, of our religions, of our supremacist culture. We are all Jews. We are all Palestinians. We are all Muslims. We are all undocumented immigrants. We are all gay. We are all lesbian. We are all bisexual. We are all transgender. We are all refugees. We are all those who are underpaid and otherwise poor. We are all homeless. And that is what it is to have a glory attack. To be loved beyond our wildest imagination. And to love everyone else with an energy and radiance that is far beyond our capacity. And yet it is flowing through us for the healing and liberation of the world, to the extent that we continue repeatedly to take moments of authentic stillness beneath the quiet, to train our ears and to listen to the sound of the genuine within us. Listen to the sound of the genuine within you this Lent. Not the voice of control, for you and I are not in control of our lives or other people's lives. Not the voice of our ego. Life is not all about me. Life is about the entire human family. Not the voice of my anxiety about the timing of events. The human calendar is actually an artifice. God has God's own timing on things. It's about becoming aware of the sound of the genuine in you and accessing the genuine in you, or the glory of God within you, or your true self within you. It's all about transfiguring you so that you can be an effective servant for the healing and liberation of others. Now, this has been some of the very best news I know and that I can tell you. Amen.